Hi, my name is Chris. I have over 20 years of design experience. I've worked at Google, Immutable, Ogilvy, and plenty of other places. And I've launched my own studio about a year and a half ago, and I've grown that to over 1 million in revenue. In this video, I'm going to break down 5 lessons that have cost me money, cost me time, and caused me pain. So if you're a solo freelancer and building an agency, these are the pitfalls to avoid if you want to scale cleanly. First mistake was underpricing high value work. When I started, I was trying to get my foot in the door, so my monthly price was quite low. I was charging 9K per month. I realized very quickly for the talent and the seniority that I want to hire in my designers, the cost was basically the price of what I was charging clients. I could have them spread across a couple of projects, but it still wasn't making too much sense. Comparing hiring a full-time designer to hiring a contract designer and considering that if the company had to do that in-house, how much that will cost them, I was very underpriced. So I learned a big lesson about how much I should be charging. So I've raised my prices and now my core monthly price is 25,000. I've even charged 50K per month for one specific client. Part of that has been just understanding the worth and the value that we're bringing to the clients. My second mistake was not locking in scope early. So I generally charge a monthly retainer, which is great because it allows for iteration and doesn't get messy in terms of scoping and changes along the way. But there's always some clients who just want a fixed price, and I work with them to develop that package. It makes the client feel a little bit better, but at the end of the day, it's normally the contractor that gets a little bit screwed. Things change all the time. The scope changes, things take more or less time. Client wants to go in this direction, and there's a lot of upfront work involved in trying to figure out exactly what needs to get built. And so at the end of those projects, there was always a case of the time that you thought you were going to spend is way less than what you actually spent. So your cost is higher, your profit margin is lower, and then your satisfaction is lower as well. So you're less inclined to take those kind of projects in the future. The third lesson was letting my social media presence fade. At the start, I was getting some viral tweets out there. I was posting about the success. People were loving it. I was getting a lot of reach. And I realized that that reach really helped clients come through the door and book in calls. As I got into the heat of the moment with the studio in the second, third month, when we scaled up and we had about 18 active clients at one time, I completely let my social media presence fade. I was focusing on the work. And I had to. It was that part of the journey for me where I had to go all in and just deliver great work. But then because of that, my social presence had kind of faded away, which meant that as these initial client projects were finishing up, the pipeline of new clients was disappearing and I needed to get that going again. I've seen it so clearly when I do spend some time actually scheduling content, posting, being active, the amount of new client bookings is significantly different to when I was just keeping it static. So making sure you always have a pipeline of content is super important because the main thing here is being top of mind to clients. So they're not going to hire you if they don't know about you, and how they hear about you is through a referral, seeing you organically on TikTok or X or LinkedIn, and that being top of mind is what gets them to think of you when they need a designer. My next mistake was hiring without enough due diligence. So I was rushing, I had a lot of clients, I was scaling up, and as I mentioned in other videos, I hadn't done this before, I had no idea what I was doing, so I was trying to figure it out. And so there were some contractors where I'd bring in, I would just take their word for their experience because it was under NDA and they said they had Web3 experience and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, they couldn't really deliver and they didn't have the experience to work as fast as I needed them to. They needed more time to get the context before they could hit the ground running. And that looked bad on me as a studio because I was positioning myself as a Web3 expert, yet the designer I had assigned to one of these projects had no Web3 experience, even though they told me they had. And so this lesson was a big one for me where I realized that I need to really look into who I'm hiring. Do they have the right context? Do they have the same values and similar mentality to me and how we work? They don't have to be the same as me. In fact, it's probably better that they're not the same as me. I like to have variance in my team, but making sure you're vetting your contractors and team and really maybe doing some test projects really helps to understand, are they going to be able to deliver? Because that's completely damaged my relationship. I had to personally jump in and repair that. And luckily they stayed on. They're one of my biggest advocates now, but that was a crazy moment where I was really stressing. I had no idea what I was doing. I was very disheartened by the whole experience, but it's something I've learned a lot from. The other mistake is letting clients drive the process. So I position my studio as an expert in design for UX and products, and I have a lot of experience to back that up. So I'm to you with a specific process or way of doing things. If you know that it's not right, then you should be able to push back. And that's one thing I always hold true in my process is if I don't agree, I voice my opinion. So we're not saying we have to do it this way, but we're sharing our opinion about why we think it should be that way, and they can share their opinion and then we can find a happy medium. But if you just take the client's word for it, you may end up doing something where you know that is not actually right. And this happens a lot actually, because I am a service provider. They come to me. It's very, very easy to fall in the trap of, I'm just going to do it the way they want it because then they're happy. They'll keep me for longer and they want to do more work with me. But in reality, they're coming to me for my expertise. So having that pushback, and even if you know that, this little change to make this button blue or whatever will make them happy, if you point out that maybe this color doesn't actually match your brand, or like this orange that you want to use is actually the liquidation color on this trading terminal, so it's a negative connotation, they don't know unless you tell them. And they're hiring you for your expertise. So you need to make sure you are standing by those values. So what would I do differently? Honestly, probably not much, because all of these lessons were super valuable. Having these pain points has been super valuable for me to grow and improve the way that I do things. And I'm not sure it would be the same if someone just gave me that list at the start and I just followed it. I think sometimes you have to experience these things for yourself. But either way, these are lessons that I've had. They're my biggest pain points, and there's probably a lot more to come in the future as I scale it up. Here's to many more mistakes.